bam! We are live with some indie game business. We're live. We got Jay sitting over here next to me, and of course, we have Jay. Then we also have a special guest. What is that? Water? My father-in-law just brought me 4 more shots of espresso. So with these 4,
nice.
These 6 and this 4, that'll be 10. We have Heather Chandler, who worked at Epic Games. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
So, Heather.
More stuff?
What's that?
Okay, never mind.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Heather.
Okay, well, I've been working in the games industry since 1996. So I have spent over 20 years making games.
You're 2 years ahead of me.
I know. I started working at Activision a long time ago, and then moved, and I worked on a bunch of games there. Apocalypse, which was the game that Bruce Willis did. Remember that a long time ago? That PlayStation game? Yes. And after I was at Activision, I moved to work over at EA and worked on a bunch of different casual games there. And then I ended up at Redstorm working on Tom Clancy titles, and I worked on all of the Ghost Recon titles from the first one up through, I think, the 7th iteration of whatever they did.
And this, you were doing this as a producer in all of these situations? Or?
Yes, as a producer. All of my stuff's been focused on production, so basically worked my way up from sort of the lowly production assistant type role to the senior producer role. And then I've also written a bunch of books about game production and localization. And in the middle of all that, I also consulted and worked with a bunch of different companies, and I worked on games like Never Alone, which came out, oh man, that was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's been out for a while now.
Yeah, and it was a partnership with the Cook and Let Tribal Council, which was pretty cool. And then about 3.5 years ago, I started working at Epic as a senior producer on Fortnite.
As a?
As a senior producer.
As a senior. Okay.
Yeah, at the time I was the senior producer, but then other senior producers got hired. As you can imagine, that game requires a lot of support.
Yeah. To
make it happen.
No. Okay. So then now what are you doing?
Now, I am working for myself again because while Fortnite was an amazing experience and I absolutely loved it, I always still have a passion for smaller indie games, actually, and for doing games like Never Alone, where the games have some sort of special social impact. And I really like that experience, so that is what I'm doing now. I'm working on, they're unannounced right now, but other projects in that vein. And I'm also writing a new book, which I hope to get done so that it's at GDC next year.
Oh, nice.
I was gonna say, is this a you book or like a Raphael book?
This is a me book. I am writing another book about game production.
Jay, can you can you get the links to those per books? Is there a way you could give us a link? I can't look in Discord chat, so post it or talk.
Where are they sold, Heather?
You can get them on Amazon. The Game Production Handbook 3rd edition is probably the best one to link to. And then the other one would be the Game Localization Handbook 2nd edition. So those are the 2 main ones that are still out and worth reading.
So the collection of poems by Heather Chandler that I just found would not be the right one?
Collection of what?
Poems.
Poetry? I wish I could write poetry, though.
Like you said. That's what it sounded like. I don't know.
All right, yeah, I'll get these posted in the chat. Just a second.
Okay, so games of passion. You know, I worked with Jason, but speaking of that's old stuff. So games of passion. So Never Alone. I actually don't know any.
Okay.
Alone.
It's an indie game, a platformer game, where you play a Native American girl from the Inupiat tribe up in Alaska, and her companion is this little white Arctic fox. And the platformer is set up so that you switch between the characters because each character has different skills that allow them to go into different areas.
That's
And
gorgeous.
it is heavily based in the traditions of the Inupiat people. It was a collaborative effort between the tribe and the game developers. And so it was a very awesome experience because we were able to make a game, a commercially viable game, and really work very closely with the tribe to make sure that their culture was represented accurately and that the game was fun, and it was really, really awesome. And it won a BAFTA and a bunch of other awards.
Yes, it has 3,800 very positive reviews.
That's nice to hear.
51 mostly positive. November 18th, 2014.
Oh, wow. God, that seems like a long time ago now.
Yeah.
Back in my day.
Everything pre-Fortnite just is gone to you at this point.
Yeah,
That's
it pretty much is. Been
You know what?
obliterated.
Alone. Just get you. Right?
Yeah, so Cassini,
I have this
that's
game.
the Inupiat way to say never alone.
I own this game, apparently.
Did you get it on Steam?
You know what? I have like 2,000 games, so I don't know. Yeah, but it's on Steam.
Okay, I bet.
No, it is on Steam. I have it on.
It's also available on iOS, and I think it's on a console. Yeah, it's on Xbox and PlayStation too.
It's on mobile. It's on all kinds of things.
So there's no excuse not to go play it.
It's on the App Store, Google Play, Steam, GOG, Humble, Indigala, the Mac App Store, PS4, PS3, Xbox One, Wii U, and NVIDIA Shield.
And NVIDIA Shield.
Dun, dun, dun. That's like the tipping thing.
But if you buy it on PS4, you can't play with anybody else.
Price point, $14.99. Price
How much is it?
$14.99. $17.99 with the DLC and the free soundtrack.
Oh.
Charming, beautiful game. Kotaku said that. Eurogamer, stunningly poignant, quite brilliant.
It really is. I agree with all of those things.
And you're not biased at all. That's the best part.
No, it really is an awesome game, though.
Did you beat the game?
And I will say that my role in the game, though, was an interesting one because I actually was the bridge between the game development group and the people at the Cook Inlet Tribal Council. So I got to work with both groups to make sure, because the Cook Inlet people, the ladies that were spearheading this effort, were not familiar with games at all or how to make them, but they were thinking of different ways that they could create something commercially viable to contribute to helping make the tribe self-sustainable. And they thought a video game would be a great way to kind of reach out to their youth and to communicate their culture. And so they just dove in. They're pretty amazing, and they didn't really know anything about how to actually make a video game. They just knew what they wanted to do, and they had a very clear vision. So I was their game development consultant, basically, that helped them, work with the developers and make sure that they got what they were wanting and all of that stuff. It was pretty cool.
Did you have you beaten the game?
No, I have not. Actually, the last section is pretty tough. And it is, I'd have to spend more time doing it. I probably could eventually. My son definitely could. He is a huge platformer, so sometimes I have to get him to help play through sections of games for me so that I can get past it.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
So this is always the first question. How did you initially end up at Activision and get started in the industry?
I was living in Los Angeles. I had recently graduated from the USC Film School, and I had a master's in film studies, which is basically I knew how to watch films and talk about them and say, hey, this is awesome or not awesome. I knew a little bit about filmmaking because you have to do some production courses. And I was really interested in getting into the film industry. Activision contacted me because they were very interested in film people. Because they were trying out different ways to make games. And so I went in and interviewed with them. And I really liked the vibe of making games because it's, it's creative, it's got technology, it's fun, it's interactive, so people don't just sit back and watch it passively, they're actually engaged in it. And at the time they were working on some really exciting projects. For example, Muppet Treasure Island, which, if you haven't played, is an awesome point-and-click adventure game based on the Muppet Treasure Island movie. And they also did a really cool game back then called Spycraft, which was one of the first games that I can recall where they actually collaborated with somebody who used to work for the CIA, and I want to say a former KGB agent, to make a game about how to be a spy. And it had full motion videos, which were kind of cheesy at the time, but you went in and there was a case that you had to solve, and you walked through it, and they tried to make it seem more authentic. And that was a really neat experience. And so I spent a lot of time, I was the low man on the totem pole, so basically I just played that game a lot and did a bunch of play testing on it. I had to go run errands and, scan things and set up meetings and stuff like that. There was also a game I worked on called Zork, if you may be familiar with that.
Zork.
They were doing called Zork Nemesis, which was, I believe, the first 3D game in that series that was also a point-and-click adventure. And this was back when Myst was super, super popular, and lots of people were looking at making these sort of adventure games. And so I ended up there working, and I really, really liked it. And I had some very good mentors there. And I remember that one of the guys that I worked for was Howard Marks, who was he and Howard Marks and Alan Gershenfeld ran the studio part. And they said, hey, where do you see yourself going in the next few years? And I said, well, I want to be a game producer. So they said, okay, well, here's what you should be doing if you want to do that. And they were like, look, you need to learn about games. So I started reading as much as I could about games in the industry. I started playing lots of different games to kind of get familiar with them. And, I was very lucky because Activision had a huge internal studio at the time that was a couple hundred people, because we had about 10 projects in development at any one time. And so I could go around and talk to whoever I wanted to, as far as engineers, artists, designers. They were all right there, all very super helpful, willing to answer your questions. So it was a great training ground because I was able to work my way up to a producer role there, and I learned, on the job, all of these different skills. And as I was doing it, I was like, I wish there had been a book or something, because I'm somebody who's very into self-teaching and hey, if there's a book about it that I can read, I would love that. And so in my mind, I already started thinking, hey, I want to write a book about game production one day, just to put in all of the things that I wish I had known, so that anybody else who's in my position, who's kind of hey, what's a game producer do, has a better idea of what it is, why that role's important, how you go about doing it well, where you can learn about it, and all of that stuff. So that's kind of where it all started.
See, and that's how so many of us got started back then. It's you go into a company. I mean, Activision wasn't small. I went into a small company, but you end up being in that role where you do a little bit of everything, and it helps you figure out what you actually like doing, so you can go from there. But I mean, that's awesome that they were, from the get-go, we're like, what do you want to do? And let's start, taking you down that route.
Yeah, I was very lucky, and I loved working there. But then I wanted to move away from Los Angeles because I'm originally from the East Coast. So that's why I ended up back on the East Coast. And then I've been lucky enough to have my game career, still have a really great career over here, even though, a lot of game development, as you know, Jay and Dan, is on West Coast, specifically in like the Los Angeles, San Francisco. And there's a bunch of stuff going on in Texas too.
Yeah, folks ask about the North Carolina scene, and I'm like, okay, you have Epic, and now we have Insomniac and Ubisoft. And aside from that, there's about 36 small studios, but that's where the bulk of everybody is.
Yeah. I heard that someone else was going to, I heard, and I can't remember which company, I heard that they were looking at opening something here, but I don't know, can't remember who it was.
I don't know. You're closer. I moved out of the hotbed, up to the mountains where it's nice and cool. It doesn't get to 90 degrees and 100 degrees anymore. All right, so why don't you, and we'll let you freeform this, drop some planning knowledge on us, some project management, because obviously you've done everything from the small stuff to, I mean, you were in the middle of Fortnite going from save the world to, hey, let's try this battle royale thing. And then, oh my God, so this is your forum. Drop some knowledge on us.
So one of the things that I found when I talk to people at conferences or eager new game developers or indie game developers, they're all like, how do I make a game, right? That's a common question. Or like, not how do you make a game, like, hey, how do I use an engine to do that? But how do I make a game that can actually get out there and get noticed, and I can show it to people and have something done? And the other question I get is, hey, I have a group that's making a game, but everything's so chaotic and confusing and communication's really bad. We're not getting anything done. What should I be doing? So I think those two are very hand in hand, because if you have a team where it's confusing and chaotic and there's lack of communication, and yet you're trying to make this goal of actually making a game that people will see, you want to think about how you sort of plan and do production. And that's not an area that everyone's like, ooh, when I grow up, I want to be a game producer, because generally, everyone's like, what does the producer do? Oh, well, my producer orders dinner for us. My producer does this, my producer does that. Way back in the day, they used to go pick up dry cleaning when people used to have things dry cleaned. And so I think it's a role that can be misunderstood depending on what exposure you've had to it. So my philosophy is, like, a producer is there to help pull all these pieces together and get them somewhat organized or pointing in a single direction, so that you guys that are making the games, the designers, the artists, the engineers, the testers, all those folks, don't have to worry about all these little things that keep popping up that are going to prevent you from ultimately meeting your goal in the best way possible. So I would say that as an indie game developer, if you can't get somebody who's just going to focus on the role of production, which is basically picking up all the disparate threads, pulling them together somehow and saying, hey, everybody, let's use Google Docs as this one depository, and here I'm going to somewhat organize it by saying, hey, here is all sort of creative documentation, here is schedules, and I'll get back to that in a minute. Here is things that the publisher asked us for. So just helping the team take this information and put it together in a useful format is going to go a long way in making your team feel understanding of what it is they're supposed to be doing, when they need to do it, and how they know if it's finished.
So you're basically the professional cat herder.
Pretty much. And like I said, producers do get a bad rap because, yes, I mean, depending on where I am and what company I'm with, I have sort of different emphases. So in some places, it is all about schedule. Hey, here's the schedule. When do you think X is going to be done? We'll go make sure that gets done by this date. And it is very, very date-driven and very calendar-driven. And so you spend a lot of time breaking down tasks, saying, oh, well, did you get your thing done? And so I think that is sort of the vision that a lot of people have of producers, is this person who stands over their desk and is like, is your thing done yet? Is it done now? When do you think it's going to be done? Tomorrow? Okay, I'll come back tomorrow. And so...
And that's so accurate.
I've been that person because, like I said, it really depends on what sort of the company as a whole, what the expectation is. But I think also that in a good way, a producer is somebody your team comes to you and is like, hey, I have a problem. I don't have time to sort it out, but I need these things so that I can finish the thing that I'm doing. So, for example, I worked with a UI team. So one of the things, and I'll talk a little bit about, use Fortnite as this example, but I was working with the UI team, and we had to make sure that we had all the UI ready for when we went on console. And that team was, fairly sizable, and I worked a lot with the UI leads to figure out a really good way to track all the different UI screens that needed to get done, and then make sure that they were signed out and that it was grouped with appropriate people to do different things. So I really put together sort of a full implementation plan. And it wasn't necessarily tied to dates like, okay, well, group A is going to have all their stuff done. But we really focused on what's the minimum that we needed done out of all of the different things that needed to get done and prioritize those. And then we were able to get those assigned out to sort of groups within the UI team so that we had a rough idea of when things would start coming online and when we'd be able to start iterating on them. So that was kind of a large job because we had to pull together so many different people and make sure that that group had a really clear understanding at a high level of what the expectations were for when we needed sort of like priority one UI stuff and then rolling on down the next thing. So I didn't necessarily spend a lot of time, scheduling each separate screen out. I will admit that is something I tried initially. I'm like, oh, this will be easy. I'll take every single screen and I'll do this, this, and this, and I'm going to make this awesome Microsoft project thing, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes those things just don't work. And the best you can do is just put something high level together and work with the team to kind of track and account for it. And then when you're asked to report back on it, we basically, instead of doing it by date, kind of did it by phase. So I said, well, these things all have phase 1 done. Phase 2 is next. That roughly takes X number of days and whatnot. So I would say for developers out there making games, you really have to work with your teams to find out where it's important for the team to be aligned and pointed in one direction, and for them to understand what the goals are and sort of what the rough time frame is to hit said goal. And that's where production can be super useful.
So which tools in particular do you recommend? And I imagine there's different ones for different size studios and projects, but what's the basics that you think they need to start out with?
I'd say like the most basic thing is an Excel sheet. Honestly, I have been doing this for a very long time, and I'm sad to say that like still Excel is sometimes the best medium for organizing a bunch of stuff. Because you can just quickly make like, here's a checklist of all the stuff that needs to get done. You can, make little matrices and whatnot to show who's doing what thing. It's very easy to use. It's very intuitive in a way because you're not constrained by, and I'll talk about project in a minute, but you're not constrained by other things that are going to prevent you from somewhat organizing the sheet in a way that makes sense to you. Yeah. And if you're an Excel guru, of course, you can do these macros and neat shading and color coding and all that stuff. Because I think at a minimum, you need to have one place where you sort of outline just generally like, hey, here's everything that needs to get done for this game to be at a place where we can have it playable and then have people come in and do it. And Excel's a good tool. I have had good experience using Google Calendar just to kind of note key dates, and that's something that can be easily shared with the team so we can all say, hey, we're trying to get first playable done by this date. So it's on a calendar. They can always go there and say, oh yeah, that's the date. So that what inevitably happens, of course, is as people start chatting and whatnot, dates shift and slide around, and the team gets confused because they don't know what the real dates are. So the producer can kind of be the authority on like, these are the dates until this calendar changes, right? Because I think a lot of times teams get confused because people are working towards different dates. They're not really sure what it is they're supposed to be doing. somebody comes to their desk and is like, oh, well, I actually need this thing first versus that thing. A producer is super useful because if you're using your producer correctly and instead of just saying to the person, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, let me go do that, it throws other people off who might have been waiting for stuff that you were doing. But if you go tell your producer, hey, producer person, so-and-so came and said that they actually need this widget before that widget. And the producer can say, oh, okay, great. That's fine. Let me switch that around so that everybody knows. So the producer is the central holder of all the knowledge. They should have everything organized in a single spot.
All the knowledge.
All the knowledge. So you could,
Man.
using Google Calendar and Excel are very easy ways to do this because you also want to keep it somewhat light for the team so that they don't have to go through all this rigmarole of installing different software projects and whatnot.
No, I've always said I have much, much, much respect for a producer. It's just that kind of stuff. I personally would hate that job. I can barely manage all of my stuff. You know, yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm overloaded. I've got all this and that and this. But producer is just like one of the most talented individuals. And I'm not buttering you up or anything. I'm just like, you know, just a little side track. I work with this community something, and there's a lot of people that are involved. It's a community deal, but there's no like real central, you know, some people will do this and then someone will change it and nobody knows. And this is a big mess a lot of the time. We need that. We definitely need to kind of produce. I'm not the one for that job, but man,
I was going to say, you could try doing that.
No. Like I said, I can barely manage my, I'm pretty good at managing.
Yeah. I don't like it.
I can manage my stuff fairly well. I mean, I will mess up, and also, you know, I've run like charity events with a lot of people, that kind of stuff. But just to do that continue, and it just seems like it's, you know, there's like a week worth of meetings to get everything organized, and then another week of organizing it, and then the rest of the time is getting on people's ass. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other meetings.
Yes.
And that, in a nutshell, is exactly what a producer does.
That's what a producer does. Exactly.
That's amazing.
You're exactly right.
I want a producer for me. Okay.
Basically, Heather is, you know, advocating actually communicating with your team, which is just ridiculous and unheard of in this industry. And
crazy.
Oh. And to get back to the tools a little bit, because I know people are like saying, but what about Microsoft Project?
I did have a question though about something. You said that you use Excel. Why not Google Docs? Google Spreadsheets?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Google Spreadsheets is probably better. In my mind, they're the same. Use some type of spreadsheet thing.
Okay.
Preferably that you can share.
Something that you can share, and something, and this is important, so everybody listen, that you keep it updated. Okay?
Like look at it every day?
You're going to have to go look at all your sheets every day and make sure that they're correct. Okay?
That should be like your number one thing. You get up in the morning, you go to work, first thing you do is open up your sheets.
That's I do that. I do that. And I check everything. And I'm like, I'm not sure this date's correct. I better go find out, you know? Because things like that, things can change in the span of hours. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many times. Oh my God. And this is what's so bad about being a producer is I am there to help my team of developers. So I'm actually working for them. And I always strive to make their job as easy as possible. Right. And if they have a question, I want to be able to answer it accurately. Because I don't want to be the type of producer that's on their ass all the time being like, well, you know, they're waiting for this. Unfortunately, sometimes you're put in positions where you do have to do that. But what the absolute worst is you go and do this, you get on someone's case, you're like, hey, when's this thing going to be done? Blah, blah, blah. Is it going to be done today? That's like the most number one important thing that you need to be doing now. And then honestly, then this happens a lot. I'll go talk to somebody else and a different decision's made. And all of a sudden the thing that person was working on that was the most important thing isn't the most important thing anymore. So now in the span of hours, you have to go back to the same person and be like, yeah, you remember how I said that was the most important thing and that you should only be working on that? well, the thing that you told me was important, this happens. The thing that you told me that you thought was more important actually is more important now. So you should be working on that. And then they sigh and they look at me and they're like, because of course they knew all along that was coming. So then they have to switch, the context switching thing, which is
You got to switch gears and all that
developers.
stuff.
Yeah, resyncing things. So, now I've got to resync this branch,
And then it's your fault.
ruins their lives.
It's
And
your
I
fault.
kid you not, one day I had to go back to that person a third time, and I'm like, yeah, that thing, actually the thing you were working on before now is like the thing. That's super frustrating. Now, I often look back on those types of things and I'm like, how could I have done a better job? Because now I have a developer who's super frustrated. He can't trust what I'm telling him, right? And so that makes his job harder because next time this comes around, am I going to be giving him good information? And so the thing that I've also learned in my career is when people say they're going to change their mind or make a different decision, it is really, really important for the producer to find out everything they can about this decision and why they think that it needs to be done and made, because it's your responsibility to make sure that that these people are making the right decisions and that they're making the right decisions for the game and that they have a full understanding of how this impacts the other work that's being done. And that is really hard to do sometimes, especially if the person who's asking for the change is higher up, is more of a stakeholder level person and he's like a decision maker and like what he says goes, because you need to make sure that he has a full picture enough to make a good decision. And so if you don't give him that information and he's like makes a decision and then you go and communicate it to the team, you haven't necessarily done the best job that you could have as a producer.
So
there's a lot of
you get information from both ends. You have to have like a deep understanding of everything. So both ways. So you can explain to the person that you have to tell them that change, but you can also describe to the person that's telling you we should do this instead. You need to be able to go, well, that might not be the best idea. Instead of just being, okay, I'll go tell them and then run off and then, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds so fun.
I know. And then once that decision is made, not only did that person who was doing the key thing, there's a bunch of other people that are going to be impacted by that as well. And so one of the things is that I used to have sort of like this little rule that, okay, I'm not going to go tell anybody that something has changed until the next morning, just to kind of like let them finish the day out on whatever the task is they're working on, so that instead of having them do a switch right in the middle of the day, which is terrible, at least when they come in the morning, you can have that conversation with them, and maybe by then the decision might have been reversed or something different. So it gives you a little bit of time,
And it also like gives the person time to like, okay, I know it's ending, so I have to wrap up this amount so I can continue with it tomorrow. So they're actually at a stopping point.
Exactly.
What is this day's ending thing that you speak of, Indy? There's no.
Dude, you know what? I have made an agreement with my wife. After 8 p.m., my day is over. Or work after 8 p.m.
I told you the best thing that I have done for my sanity was last October when we went on vacation and I turned off email notifications on my phone.
Yeah.
And my life has been way better.
My email notifications are off on my phone.
Yeah, and I would say email is a huge distraction. And I use, where you work and people use Slack and stuff, like Slack, such a time waster sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Get on Slack and then the comment is like, go to the Trello board and then check out Git. And then from there, it's all, then go to GitHub. And you're.
Oh, yeah, and then you're down this rabbit hole. But yeah, you mentioned Trello. Trello is actually a really great tool for organizing information and tasks.
Which is actually Trello right now. They're doing some things like help premium. Promote. They have a whole Trello. That is actually.
No, I'm not. I want your thought on this, Heather. A lot of games we're seeing like publicly post their Trello board, and so.
Oh yeah.
Where is that a good thing or a bad thing when all of a sudden, especially like in a live service game, when your users can already see what's being worked on and basically start to pre-bitch about it?
would rather hear somebody pre-bitching about something that we know we're already working on, because you can point to the board and be like, yeah, we're working on that, it's on the board, than to bitch about things that we know need to get done and we're probably going to start working on, but we don't have any evidence to show them. I think the neat thing about the Trello boards being made public is, look, I think because the players, make or break your game, clearly, right? And you want to make sure the players have all the information. And in this era of, like, let's be transparent so the players can understand, I think players enjoy that. And I think it provides, let me think now, I was going down one tangent, but now I'm rethinking.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to Indie Game Business.
So the benefit of a public Trello board is the players have a place that they can go, and if they see the thing that they feel most passionate about is already on the board, that means that they know they need to take care of it. And depending on how the Trello board is organized, I know some developers say these ones are in active development. These are ones we need more information on. These are ones, that we're not really sure where we need to go with it, but we know that a lot of people are frustrated by it, so that's why it's on the board. So at least they already have an understanding of, like, what's in the queue now. I think it also is useful because it does help educate the players about, like, here's how a game gets made, because I think people love their games, and sometimes they get frustrated by, why can't you turn this thing around in a day to make my life easier?
That most common comment of, you're making millions of dollars and you can't fix XYZ,
Yeah.
Love that comment.
That's because if you're making millions of dollars, it can't get fixed right away because it has to go through the process of saying what it is, getting approval, setting and scheduling, and that takes a long time.
That's true, and I think so the players understand that. The other thing is that sometimes the things the players ask for, while it at the surface seems a very minor change, can have fundamental changes throughout the game systems. So the developers have to go back and really evaluate, is this something that is worth it for our game? And so then in that case, they might go do UX testing in the middle of all of this to get data to utilize as well, in addition to the feedback and stuff they're getting. Because I think the other thing that players need to realize is that all the people that are commenting on forums and Reddit and whatnot, your feedback is absolutely valuable, and people are interested in it. It helps really guide the game. But there are a lot of other people that don't necessarily post on all of these forums their opinions. So UX testing is a different way to get actual data on, is this thing or that thing more preferable, or does this have the intended impact? And so a lot of times you might see folks complain very loudly about something, and then UX testing is done, and it turns out that the testing reveals that the way it's implemented is fine, and in fact, majority of players are not having issues with it. So now they have to figure out, well, what is it about this group of players that really hates this? What is it that they actually want to get? And then trying to figure out if you can find a solution for them, or if you can make them happy somehow.
It never fails. There's somebody's always going to be angry about something, and that is the biggest thing that always gets me when I see these complaints. It's like everybody has that, well, I need it, so everybody needs it mentality, and they don't realize that, even if you have 300,000 people on Reddit in a game like this, you're still the minority. You're not the majority, and people just don't see that a lot of times, and they don't respect it ever. So,
and I don't think it's specific to games either. I mean, people just get unhappy about many different things that they post about.
Well, you know what? The loudest voice is not always the correct.
But I mean, I do think, like, to get back to I think the Trello boards at least give the players some idea of what actually is getting attention and focus, and I think that's good. So I would rather that companies did that than not.
I was curious from the actual production standpoint, because I'm seeing it more and more on a lot of the games that I play.
You mean
So,
the actual production aspects?
yeah, I mean the Trello boards, because when I was producing, which is, bless you, a role I never want to go back to ever again, it was always it was like we have enough to worry about without making our pipeline public. That always got me, and I see it happening now. And the back of my head is screaming, the ex-producer is going, why in the hell are you doing this? But, it's always good to get, a much more experienced, weigh in on it.
From the actual, that creates extra work. A lot of times those Trello boards, like the thing to remember about, or the thing to consider about live games is once the game is live, it's not just like the development team, it's the community team, it's the publishing folks, it's the marketing folks. Like, all of this stuff gets synthesized throughout all of these different layers to help figure out what makes sense. And so, you're right, like having a Trello board like that in some ways probably creates additional work actually to just make it and maintain it. But on the other hand, if you didn't have it, you're still going to have all these inputs from marketing, PR, and community that are going back to the team that they still have to sort through anyway. So I think the Trello board is mainly just a manifestation of stuff that the team actually is working on based on feedback they've gotten from all of the live game sources anyway. So the team's going to be working on these things, so might as well roll it out on a Trello board so that the players can see that there's actual movement being made on a set number of stuff. And the things that the team is working on, like, in theory, a live game has somewhat of a roadmap of like, hey, in a month, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, we're going to be doing these things. But the reality is once they put something out there, let's say it's super awesome and the fans really respond to it, they might say, you know what, this thing that we were going to plan in for month 2, actually, let's bump that out and let's put some effort into this thing that the players are all excited about and see if we can improve that or make that better or turn that into an actual gameplay feature,
So let's use that as a example. And I understand you're going to need to be vague here, but I think you're coming from one of the worst case scenarios possible. You have a game that you've been working on for 2.5 years. It's a single player game. You put a version out there that is free to play and it just explodes. So one, how much chaos did that cause? And two, what did you use? What, tools, ideas, whatever, how were you able to manage that process, as good as possible?
Yeah. So I think in an example like that, the team, depending on the team, they're very prepared to take risks and kind of be on standby to handle whatever's going to happen. So, I think it's public knowledge that in the case of Fortnite, it was a different team that did the Battle Royale portion of it. So we still had the Save the World folks were working on their stuff, and then the Battle Royale team was a different team that had been working on the Unreal thing. So that we all came together, and I think all along the thinking was like, look, we're going to see what happens with this, and then whatever way it goes, we're just ready to shift directions and focus on that. And it was just, it was chaotic, I don't necessarily want to go into a bunch of detail about it, but yeah, certainly, just generally, let's say you're a game maker and you put this thing out there and you're like, I wonder what's going to happen. I'm trying to think of some good real world examples because I know it's happened. I can't think of a good example right now.
I don't think it's ever happened to the level that it happened with Fortnite.
Not to this level for sure. And I think it's just, it's the same sets of problems you would see, except they're just 100 times. And at that point, you just have to be like, okay, well, what is the number one thing today that needs to be dealt with? And so I think it goes from being something that you're looking sort of like a month in advance a week in advance, but you're just looking at it a day-by-day thing, like, okay, well, what do we need to do today? And once you kind of get through all of that stuff and things somewhat settle down to a dull roar, you can start projecting out, okay, now let's think about 2 or 3 days out. And I think that's probably a best case scenario of how you can start to work through chaos like that has been created, is just to keep, it's like when I look at my sheet every day or my dates right, it's the same thing. What's the number one thing that needs to happen today? And it's going to be different each time until things sort of settle in, and then you can project out a little bit further.
Managing chaos. I can't imagine how crazy that might have been.
Yeah.
All right, so what else do you want to hit on? I mean, we've taken you down multiple tangents now. Let's get back to what you actually wanted to chat about.
I think I chatted about what I wanted to. On your show, do you take questions from people?
We do occasionally, if some of them pop up. We haven't had any pop up.
If anybody's
yet.
out there and you have a question,
When it's out there.
now is your opportunity.
The beauty of this show is none of us get like wrapped around the axle about how many people are watching like right now, because we archive these things and we put it on YouTube, and we want developers to come back and look at stuff and have it as a resource. That's why we do this.
So what basically Jay is saying, imagine an indie developer is asking you.
I get a lot of questions about, and I'm sure Jay has already answered these sorts of questions. How do I get funding for my game? And the answer is, I don't know. I know how.
If we knew, we'd be funding our own games. Scratch off tickets.
Bam, you've heard it all. Thanks for watching, everybody.
And in line with that, though, I mean, I guess I would say another piece of advice, though, is and this is specifically, I guess, for new developers or people just kind of getting into the industry and trying to figure out, what they're trying to do, is there are so many resources out there, so many, and Google search can help uncover lots of these. Many times will have people come up and ask me, hey, I'm interested in getting into games. How do I do this? What resources do I need? And I had somebody ask me that funding question the other day. He had this really interesting project. And he's like, but I won a $150 grant, blah, blah, blah. But like, how do I find out, where do I get more of these? Or how do I find more funding? And I said, well, and I'm sitting there at my computer and I Google indie game funding. And of course, lots of things pop up. And I'm like, oh, well, have you gone to Indiecade or Indie this, Indie that? Oh no, and I'm like, okay, well, you might want to just do a Google search of indie game funding and see what pops up.
The answer is lmgtfy.com.
Yes.
What is that?
That's called.
Oh, that is an awesome site.
It's called. Yes. It's let me Google that for you. So when somebody asks a question like,
yes,
where do I get dog pictures? You just go to lmgtfy.com and then type in, where do I get dog pictures? Press enter, and then it gives you a link to send to them. When they get the link, they open it up, and it's Google, and it shows somebody typing in, where do I find dog pictures, or whatever the question is, and then it gives them the answer.
All right, I'm going to use that next time.
Wait, hold on. I'll put it right here in chat for us.
Okay,
because
great.
It's hilarious when you actually go to it, the way that it works.
But I think that's sort of, for me, it's like, look, if you're going to be an indie game developer, you have to be proactive. You have to be a self-starter. You have to be entrepreneurial. This information is not going to come to you. You have to go out and seek it. And a lot of advice I've been giving lately is talk to people, So I appreciate that the person came and chatted with me, because that's exactly what he should be doing. But he should be talking to other people, and not just game people. There's lots of sort of networking things you can go to, because if you're looking for funding specifically, you never know who you're going to come across if you go to some networking thing for a bunch of business people. There might be some dude who's like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in investing in games. I don't know anything about making it, but I have $10,000, for example, that I'm interested in, this idea. You're not going to know these things unless you're out there sort of trying to work that sort of producerly business angle, of it. And of course, there's tons of resources out there that you can find on Google. And if you get the opportunity to talk to a professional game developer, it would be better to ask a deeper question than how do I get game funding, right? Or even change up the question a little bit, which like, oh, can you give me or do you have any experience, or can you give me some examples of a game you worked on and how you got funding? Even that's a better question.
The best question would be, can you give me funding?
That is a great question.
Wait, how about this? I've got an idea for a game.
Oh, God.
I've got a great idea for a game. Do I think you can get someone to make it for me? No.
No.
Because game developers and game
familiar?
designers, they have their own ideas. They would much rather work on it. And unless you're the one that had the money, then
Exactly. And that's what I always say. It's like, that's awesome. You have an idea. Do you have the money to pay for it?
I have a great idea for a game, and I've got some.
No.
Okay,
Are you guys familiar with Tom Sloper or that website Sloper-Rama?
No.
SLOPERAMA. So Tom Sloper is the guy who has that site, and I'm assuming it's still there. I haven't checked on it in a couple of years. I worked with him at Activision, and he has been in the industry for a very, very long time. He started working at, I want to say Mattel or Hasbro, when they used to do like electronic toys, like even before games were a thing. And at Activision, he pretty much was the dude that they paired all the new producers with, because he was the dude that knew everything about game production.
And it's legit because he has Comic Sans as his font, so.
Yeah, it's a totally legit site. And he has a section on there, if you go to the Gamerama section, even though it's written in Comic Sans, he has really, really good advice. And, we were laughing about, how do you make a game? He gives very good and blunt advice about, the chances of your game getting made, not high. Not to say that to discourage people, but to point out that isn't actually
the reality.
Resource.
The chances of it getting made, very low. The chances of it getting made and you actually making money from it, even lower.
Even if you are a game designer, a game developer, the chances of you making a game in the very first game are super low. That is like the greatest. You can make a game and it's awesome and people love it, but the greatest accomplishment a game developer can have is finishing their own game.
I 100% agree with that. Like, just getting the game done, and that can help springboard you to working at a company, right? If that's what you're interested in doing.
And we say that all the time. It's less important how good the game was, but it's very important that you actually finish it.
Because that's a massive. There's like 2 or 3% of the start of game working themselves.
I would say that as an indie game developer, I have never finished a game. I actually had a long time ago. I was working with my husband. We had an idea for an iOS game, and we actually have a working prototype of it. And I kicked myself to this. It wasn't a great game, but it was fun. It was right before all the games started taking off on the Apple Store, so even though the game itself wasn't super great, it probably would have done okay because there was no competition.
You could have done it easily as well as the guy who did that fart app and made millions of dollars from it.
Maybe.
My son does fart app. You just press a button and it goes.
Yeah. One of the first big, apps
There's a variety to choose from too. It's not just one noise.
It's Oatmeal. What's up, buddy? You're just causing trouble. Causing trouble. Heather's causing trouble, actually.
As we're getting, towards the end of the segment, now we're starting to get people waking up going, oh, wait, now they were there.
Yeah, 1 second. Oh, okay.
Right,
Tex, what's up, man?
See, we end up having a lot of lurkers. So this Sloper-Rama site is fascinating to me. I don't know how often he updates it, but the questions in here are awesome.
Yeah, I would say he probably hasn't updated it for many, many years. He does teach at USC. Actually, he teaches in their interactive division. Yes, he's an awesome guy, absolutely. And so
Well, I mean, the website still uses frames, so I'm guessing it has been a while.
2008. Copyright 2000 to 2008.
All right. But interestingly enough, though, that information, most of it on there, still relevant. About you know what I mean? Which is...
We went back and I was, sorting through white papers and articles that I had written years ago, and I came across my GDC lecture from early 2000s, late 90s, somewhere in there, about how to negotiate a game contract. And I read through the entire thing, and with the exception of, things like we don't do country by country retail deals anymore.
Go on, Ask Jeeves.
Mobile, but it was all pretty much extremely relevant. And so we joked about me submitting it.
Make sure and have a page on MySpace.
We did submit it to GDC again years ago, and they turned it down, but like for the same reason that they wanted it. It was
DJ's out there with a mullet and a porn star mustache.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
you know what? I only started the mustache thing recently.
I found an article that it was updated March 2018. So he is updating. I mean, it's the third one down. Game year preparation.
Right.
Yeah, so it was just up.
Because he's a game designer as well. I mean, he's like he's a designer producer hybrid.
Which isn't that odd of a hybrid. A lot of small companies have it. But that's always the hybrid I fear the most, because if it's not a good, experienced person, the designer and the producer are, usually at odds with, we need this feature and we need this. No, we don't have time. And so if you have a bad producer in that role, your project can quickly spin off the wheels. So the fact that he does it successfully is a testament.
Do you think the producer is more left brain and then designer is more right brain?
Yeah, something like that. And he's one of the few people he does both roles very, very well. You don't find that. I mean, I am not a designer, so I would never bill myself as sort of that type of person, and I wouldn't want to be giving hardcore design feedback to a designer on a concept, because that's not my strength.
But I'll bet you did it 10 years ago, because I did.
Oh, I'm sure I did.
Yeah, I mean,
I very specifically did, and I won't tell you the game, but I gave them. Oh, I think it should be this way.
Yeah.
Did you see
and
that?
They did it. It was terrible.
In the chat, DJ Sarka says, "I'm thinking of making a game that tweets random nonsense from Twitter. I'll call it Hillary's Revenge."
Yes, Crytex, you can absolutely ask random questions.
Random questions to Heather.
Now, I remember, I did design 10 years ago, but now I'm in the same boat you are. I wouldn't even offer design advice to a designer now, because the industry has just leapfrogged so far ahead that the stuff that we did was like, that's like so small and compared to what you have to do today as a designer.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on Crytex's question here.
Are you going to ask a question?
There, I'll ping it. So what else do we want to talk about? Let's we've talked about planning, tools to use for planning. Let's talk about nightmares. What's the biggest cluster you've had happen on a project, and how did you get around it?
Oh, goodness gracious. Let me think now. I should have prepared some examples.
It's much more fun when you have to come up with them on the fly.
Oh, gosh. I can tell you this. Almost monthly, some sort of nightmarish thing would happen, and I'd have to fix it. Sometimes I caused it myself. I'm trying to think of the worst one. I remember there was a game I was working on, and it was going to be released on the first Xbox title, and
That was back when they used cords.
Yes, we had tested it. It had passed certification. We had the disc. So once you get a game certified, they will make a disc and send it back to you so you can test the actual disc to make sure it works. And I don't remember the exact behavior, but I do remember that when you put the disc in, the game wouldn't load. And they were getting ready to release like box product out, and oh my god, it was like this. It was a nightmare. And so we basically had to scramble together sort of this crack team of investigators to check and see what was going on. And we spent, a couple hours trying to sort it all out. And it turned out, I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember the exact details because it was so long ago, but it was something as simple as the way that the intro movie had been encoded didn't play nicely with however the video encoding on the disc was set. And so, thank God, all we needed to do was encode the movie differently, redo the game, repackage it, and then send it off, and then they pressed discs and sent those back to us like pretty quickly to test it, and that's what worked.
So it worked fine as like an upload, a digital file, but when they actually put it on a CD or a DVD or whatever, it broke.
And this was after they were all printed?
Yeah, this was after they brought it to the CD, and it was a bug that would only show up on sort of the final version of the CD because it had to do, I think, with video encoding or how the video was set to stream off the disc or something. I don't remember right now. I do remember that at the time it seemed like a nightmare because back in the day, everybody released their games at Thanksgiving. Like, that was the hard deadline. If your game wasn't out by Thanksgiving, then you're kind of fucked, to be honest.
I was going to say, fucked is the word that you're looking for.
Yeah, because you're not going to make it for Christmas. And so this game needed to be out by Thanksgiving, and if they found this issue, then it was going to delay the release until like middle of December if it was bad. And so it was kind of a big deal, and we were able to sort it out. Yeah.
All right.
Got sorted out, and you didn't have to reprint everything.
Yeah, we were very, very lucky. But so that's a nightmare. And then, there's other types of nightmares. It is when you're working with a large team, everyone's not going to get along. So a producer is often in the middle of trying to be the person who referees disagreements.
Psychologist.
Like the person that holds the kids apart by their foreheads while the kids are swinging.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of situations like that where I had to sit down with people that had a disagreement and then facilitate. That's the word I'm looking for. To facilitate the conversation.
That's a nice word.
And then most of the time it turned out fine. Okay, I understand better now. Certainly there's just lots of different stories about working with these really tight deadlines. I remember one time, this was way back when I worked at Activision, I was sitting at my desk and it was like 7 o'clock at night, and one of the execs came by and he's like, "Hey, do you have a passport?" And I'm like, "Yes."
That is never a good conversation.
He's like, "Oh, would you be able to get on a plane tomorrow and take this disc to London?" Because again, back in the day,
Yes.
They didn't have stuff set up so that you could FTP files. You had to put it on a disk. And we needed to get a Game Master disk over to Europe so that they could press the game for Europe. And we had cut it so close that the fastest way to get it there was to actually put somebody on a plane and fly them over there to hand deliver the disc to.
Oops, I broke the disc, sorry.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. So I did mine, and it was fine. It was awesome because I got to spend the weekend in London. Because all I had to do was get on a plane, go to the place, hand them the disc, and then I was done. And then I had 2 days of sightseeing, and I was awesome. Another time, I wasn't the person. There was another person they sent, and this person got sent to Italy because, again, the way the discs were set up, there was a separate disc for each separate language.
Yep.
So you only had Italian on the Italian disc, only had Spanish on the Spanish disc.
Wow.
Because back then they were too small, right, to burn all of the languages onto a single disc. He was sent to Italy to take the Italian disc over there. When he got there,
Wrong
it
disc.
was the Spanish disc.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. No, I mean, I know back in my agent days, I had a go bag, just like you see in the movies with, some special agent or whatever, but it was not, I mean, it didn't happen a lot, but those situations would come up where it's like, hey, I need you to be in Germany tomorrow morning. It's like, well, you don't have time to go home and like plan your wardrobe. You just go to RDU and get on a plane and that's it.
Oh, so Crytek's question. A little more serious question. Your guest. In my opinion, Fortnite has a very high potential to trigger a buying addiction. I confirm from my environment. Do you think it is morally justifiable to get kids to buy things pressure by building the shop on the home?
Wow, that is a pretty serious question.
No. Thanks for watching, everybody. No.
I would say that so I don't want to answer sort of the Fortnite question specifically. I mean, look, Fortnite has a whole team of designers and people that are working on the game and doing the thing they need to be for the game. To be honest, I think that there is a responsibility of parents and whatnot to understand what it is their kids are doing and to help them navigate through these
Not
game
just
loops
give
and
them a
stuff.
credit card.
Yeah.
Do what now?
And not give them a credit card.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be glib about my answer to the question, but it is a deeper question that people could debate on, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable in this forum trying to tackle a good answer for that, if that is okay.
I mean, like, if you go well, I can't say Toys R Us, but you go to a toy store, the whole thing is meant like, kids, boy, this is for kids. And I mean, that in itself is pressure. Or
I think it's worse today. I mean, and I agree with Heather. It's like, I have a 6-year-old. He plays Fortnite. And I just absolutely laugh hysterically when he gets a kill. That's my request. Whoever's on the team that does the emotes, I need you just got killed by a 6-year-old emote. But I don't give him, he doesn't have access to buy anything. And I know that it's different for parents like us who have grown up in this and we're used to this industry and we see how it goes. And there's always been, the potential for addiction, just like gambling addiction or anything else. Yes, it is there, but a lot of it does come down to parents. It's like you need to be paying attention and knowing, what's going on. But, it is a big, deeper question. There's no easy answer to it.
And I do think that Fortnite does it. I mean, the Fortnite in and of itself, if you don't spend money, it's a fun game.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to spend money to do anything. All it does is give you visuals.
But here's the catalyst that I think tips it over the tipping point, Heather, and it's the streamers. So I'm not going to take, credit as a parent or as a game developer, but I mean, there is, now that, everybody's watching Twitch and YouTube and Mixer and all this stuff, and they see, it's like, well, what is Ninja wearing today? Ooh, I have to go buy that. And
Right.
So it's not that different from, commercials when we were growing up and, oh, this is the shoes that Michael Jordan wears, so you need to wear them. For those younger folks out there, there was a basketball player named Michael Jordan back in the day, and he was actually really, really good. But, I think, for all of the problems and the concerns that are out there with kids spending money, yes, I can't completely control, what my 6-year-old does online, but I do make an effort to restrict as much as possible, from him. But, I think it is tough these days. You not only have the developers who legitimately need to make money doing the game, but you've got streamers out there that throw gas on the fire when
The point is, parents need to control their kids' money.
Everybody. Well, I mean, it's everybody. I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, this was never a problem until, Twitch came around, because it was, but I'm saying, there is fault lying in all these different areas. And I see, and I've worked with several companies that have solutions to help parents deal with it. But, you know, I'll be completely blunt and straightforward. You don't see them because they have to be implemented on the publisher developer side. And there is a immense hurdle with getting publishers and developers to implement these tools because they either don't see it as a problem or they frankly don't want to fix it. They won't say they don't want to fix it, but you know, a lot of times they don't want to fix it.
Focus on the trailer. This trailer was definitely on. Yeah, because that's their moneymaker. They were not to focus on. That's what the whole point is for. So
yeah, I mean the skins and emotes are what they sell, and you know we've seen this. This is where you know I get so frustrated with companies like EA, you know, and the clusterfuck that was the Star Wars launch back before Christmas. It's like, you know, we have now proven through Fortnite and Overwatch and League of Legends that you don't necessarily have to sell advantages in the game to make serious money. You know, you can sell skins basically and emotes and flags and mounts and whatever it may be. You look at it, and what I love about this is that this power can be used for good as well as, you know, evil. Hold on while I pull this up. Blizzard Mercy skin, Cancer. They just had here it is. The pink Mercy skin that they sold to raise awareness for breast cancer raised $12 million over like 2 weeks. You know, so there are ways of doing this, but I mean, it is, you know, parents have to watch their kids because you can't, there's a no watching Fortnite on YouTube rule in this house because streamers don't keep in, you know, mind that there may be 6-year-olds watching, and then they should. I mean, I'm not saying they should. You know, I drop bad words on here all the time, but you know, certainly do not do that shit. But I mean, it's a very sensitive issue, and it's not one, unfortunately, there's a short answer for.
Yeah.
That's the whole point.
Did I say everything? Are we done?
No. There's a couple things. So I would imagine after Epic found out, like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of money in this. I bet the the production modeling grew a lot because the amount of content put out at first, not, you know, it was very. This would come out, and then a long time later, this would come out. Now it's just like bam, bam, bam. Wonder how many are right now all together, because obviously they make it where you can't always buy everything. I just wonder,
which is
have any
brilliant.
I don't know how many skins are. I know there's a lot.
He's googling it. Let me Google that for you.
Let me Google that for you.
All right, another thing that I want to just talk about, the indie game, business of indie game. We are less than a week away from the Show Summit in 2018. 30 awesome interviews, including case studies on games, Prison Architect, Pinstripe, and the Coma series, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Kickstarter, Snapchat, Green Man Gaming, ID at Xbox and Lives on July 24th, and it's free to watch between the 20th. Is there a link?
Yeah, I put a link in there, didn't I? Did I not?
I might have accidentally.
Oh, thanks, Andy. I go to all this work to, you know, pre-do all this exceptional production stuff.
I'm muting him. I'm muting Jay right now. I have I have the power to mute you. There. That I just muted him.
you do all of this thing for your team, and then they just don't care.
They just delete.
You're getting both of you are getting muted right now. There. Now you guys are both muted. Okay,
there.
that's it. Thank you.
Put the link in there.
Back in the doc.
All right, and so of notable knowledge, tomorrow during the show, we're actually going to give away a free, whatever these things are called, the premium pass. So you get access to everything like immediately. So if you have the free pass, you can watch it during the days that it's live.
Or 24 hours.
If you have the premium pass, you can watch everything this weekend if you want to. And I've seen, virtual conferences like this, happening more and more recently, but I love the way I like the way they're doing this. It's like, it will function as a straight up regular conference. And the fact that, you need to be there to watch the lectures, watch the videos, but you just have to be in front of your computer. You don't have to be in San Francisco. But then, if you upgrade, then you get lots of other little perks. So I'm, very interested in seeing this stuff next week. And yeah, I've already gone and upgraded mine before we even started talking to them about, working together. So anyway, that's that. We'll do a giveaway tomorrow. We have like more questions now.
Yeah. What DJ Starka says, is a reliable age verification? Then the parent can sub account. That is an idea.
But it's not an idea. That's what Nintendo has.
Yeah.
That system already exists. But so DJ, I'll show you the fault in that. And it's the parents that go, I don't want you coming to me every 5 minutes because you want a new skin. Here's the password.
A solution though is to have a toggle to costumes.
Oh, that would be awesome, actually.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
Oh, and here's your let me Google that for you, Andy. Because of course there's a wiki. All the skins.
Okay.
That is a lot of content.
Holy Miss Molly.
Yes. All right, so what are we this here?
I have the Black Knight.
Crytek's got.
Oh no, I have the Royal
Knight.
Knight.
Of the game. Have you ever seen the layout of the game, and have you only been in normal lobby of the game? Only people with skins, and this has a reason. Very good marketing by Epic, and of course all the influencers. But that's not entirely true, because I see, and it may be because I'm playing with my son and his friends, and they are the no skins. But they don't show up.
No skins.
They show up in the default skins, and I see people in the default skins, running around. But yeah, definitely a solution would be to, yeah, I know it's on the parents, stupid parents. But I think the reason you see so many skins is because, well, Epic sold $1 billion worth of them, so there's going to be a lot of them around there.
Yeah.
I just
forget,
want
though, the way. Hey, to jump in, the battle pass is set up so that if you grind and put the time in, you can unlock all the skins in a season for just purchasing the initial battle pass.
No, you can't. You can unlock some of the skins.
Oh,
but
really? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. No. There are some skins that and once that season's gone, anyway.
Well,
but even during the course of the season, you can't unlock every skin. There's still skins that you have to pay for.
My bad.
We promise she really was working on this. But I mean,
it's also
what I think they're the best thing that they do is the fact that you can only get one skin or maybe two skins and two hammers or whatever a day, and the longer it stays out there, the harder it's going to be to find the one that you want. But yeah. Anyway, back to the original question. Yeah, it does. At the end of the day, it's on the parents, but we all know that that's not always going to be completely, realistic. It is funny to watch my son say, "Oh, I want that skin," and I'm like, "It's $10," and he looks at me like I've got 3 heads, and he goes, "$10?" Yeah, that's $10. And they sold $1 billion of them. So, yeah. All right. Any more?
There's 151 skins.
Did you just count all those? Wow.
Well, no, I counted across it.
Oh, wait.
Columns.
And that doesn't even account for the Season 5 Battle Pass skins. So, yeah, you can only unlock Huntress, Drift.
I haven't played it hardly at all in the past couple.
Redline.
I really liked Fortnite until everyone started playing.
The Battle Pass season. Hang on here. Oh, Season 5 skins are listed on that wiki, Jay.
Oh, are they? I'm looking at the ones you actually can unlock. So there's only 5 of them that you can actually unlock through the Battle Pass. I did good. I made it to tier 100 for the Keanu Reeves skin. But last season, I didn't make it all the way to tier 100. And this season, I'm already behind. So I like to go in the week after. That way, everybody is not jumping into the towns that I need to be in. And I'll let them go worry about their next one. And then I come and, I'll do that one next week.
I'm fine with my skin. I have the Royal Knight skin. You never ever see anybody wear it, ever. What skin is that? It's the one from the very first season.
That's funny.
All right.
So any other questions that are out there? What other questions do we have for Heather on the play? I'm sitting here thinking as I was flipping through and I posted the article, the links to your books. I'm like, we should do one with Stephanie about localization. Then I was like, oh wait, there's Stephanie actually help Heather write the localization one. That actually makes a whole lot of sense.
Stephanie, she would love it.
I need to reach out to her and we can do this all over again. And you can be back on. You are welcome anytime you want to be on here, Heather.
I would love if you have Stephanie on. Invite me back, and she and I can do a duet. She's awesome.
Do it.
All right, I'm gonna actually send her an email. I'm assuming their email hasn't changed since she got bought, right?
Yeah, it's the same email.
Okay, I'm gonna send her an email right now because that's another area that people don't think about. And did Heather and I start talking past you and you're wondering what the hell we're talking about?
No.
Okay, good.
I was just going to say, what do you think about having an animator from Blue?
Yeah.
Huh?
I'm all for it. Especially given how you're seeing China Chinese localized games on Steam just explode in sales now. I think localization is that other area that needs to be
critical.
Touched on. All right, so we're gonna do last call. Anybody's got any questions out there? But obviously you can always text us, email us, hit us up on the Discord. I'll put the Discord in there again. And
Discord.
Tomorrow we'll be, doing our usual Indie Game Business Show, but we're going to be giving away a pass to the Business of Indie Game Summit. Heather, you got anything else? Any other knowledge you want to drop?
Not right now.
See, this is fun, isn't it?
It is fun. I've really enjoyed this.
Yes.
Oh, Andy, were you going to say something?
Oh. I was just letting the uncomfortable silence I was letting it fester. I was doing. All right.
All right, well,
coming
thank
on
you,
here,
Heather.
Hey, do you have a Twitter or
Thanks for
something
having me.
that you on social media?
Who, me?
Yes.
Oh, no. No.
Like, no way. No,
Nah.
no.
That exciting. There's nothing that I'd be posting about that anybody would be interested in.
You can reach her through our website.
Yeah.
I need to actually get you on the website. I haven't done that yet. It's on my list of to do.
ST.
Yes. All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Talk to you later.
Bye.